Hi everyone, welcome back to Mode Bespoke. I'm Atenas. Today's project is going to be an oversized beach bag, which you can also use for the pool, but it is a fun summer project where you can fit all of your beach towels, bathing suits, and snacks. So let's get started. So this is what our oversized beach bag looks like. It's nice and thick, and we are going to begin by working the base part of our bag, and then we're going to move on to these different color switches, and we're going to finish off with this rope. So the materials we need are 2 skeins, because I use 2 different colors, and this is Pound of Love, and it's by Lion Brand yarn. I only used half a skein of each, so you can make 2 bags with this pattern. I also use this other yarn. It's just a tan yarn. It's a size 4 medium yarn. My parents bought this for me in Mexico, so it doesn't have a particular brand. Just pick any medium-sized yarn that you want for the base. I also used a fairly decent sized length of rope. It's not a very thick rope. So here, I'll measure it against my fingers so you can see how thick it is. It's not a very thick rope, but you can use the rope of your choice. Just measure out enough so that you have enough to make 2 straps. We're also going to be using an H hook, which is a 5mm hook, and you'll need a yarn or tapestry needle as well. We're going to begin with the base of the bag and our H hook, which is our 5mm hook. Like I said, this is a medium-sized yarn, so pick any yarn that you want. We're going to start with a slip knot, so wrap the yarn around 2 of your fingers, insert your hook into the space. We're going to grab some yarn, pull that through that loop. Just hold the loop down with your index finger and tighten everything up by pulling on the 2 threads of yarn. So we're going to get that nice and tight. We're going to chain 60 for this oversized bag. If you want a smaller bag, chain any even number. So we're going to yarn over and pull the yarn through the loop. So this is how you chain. So we have 1, yarn over, and pull that through the loop. For 2, yarn over, pull that through the loop. For 3, just keep going until you have a chain of 60. Again, if you want to make this bag smaller, just make it in any even number that you want. So I finished my chain, so I have 60, and now we're going to chain 2 more. So we have 61 and 62, and we're going to yarn over because we're going to start with double crochets. So from the third stitch from your hook, so here's stitch number 3, you are going to insert your hook, yarn over, pull your hook out, and you'll see that you have 3 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops for a double crochet. So in US terms, that's a double crochet, and we're going to make another one in that same stitch. So yarn over, look for the same stitch you just worked in, and we're going to make a second double crochet. So here are our 3 loops. So yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. I'll show you how to do it again, but we're going to go into the next stitch. So we finished here on this stitch, so we've got 2 stitches and then the chain, which counts as a third. And in the next stitch, which is this guy right here, you're going to insert your hook and make another double crochet. So we've got our 3 loops, and then we just close our stitch. So there we go. Find the next stitch on your chain and do the same. Make 1 double crochet. There we go. And we're going to do the same in the next stitch. So this very first bit of work is just 1 double crochet in every stitch of our chain. So keep working until you get to the last stitch of the row. That very last stitch of our chain, we're going to do something a little different. So just keep working until you get to that last one, because we're going to be making 4 double crochets in that last one. So see, here we are. We're on our very last stitch, and we are going to have to make 4 double crochets into that last stitch. So I'll start with my first one. So there's one. In that same stitch, we're going to make a second double crochet. So here's a 2. We'll go into that same stitch again for stitch number 3. And we will make our last and final stitch for stitch 4. And what this is going to do is it's going to create that nice little round look for the base of our bag. So here we go, we have all 4 stitches in that one. Now we're going to move on to the next part. So here are all of our stitches. We're going to make 1 double crochet in each one of them. But now we have this little tail. Now you can hide the little tail or you can just leave it and just weave it in later. But I choose to hide it, so I'm just going to line it up with my work like so. And I'm just going to keep making my double crochets like I normally would, and that's just going to tuck it in into the stitching and hide it. So I'll go into that next stitch after I did my 4, and I'm going to make my first double crochet, and then I'm going to make my second one. And just notice how I'm holding this little tail up against my work. Just hold it down and make sure that when you yarn over, you include the little tail, and that way it'll hide it. So I'm just going to keep crocheting 1 double crochet in every stitch of this row until I get to the other round. So I'm at the last stitch. So here it is. I have 2 double crochets in it already, which are the first 2 that we made, plus our chain. So that counts as number 3. So all we need is to make 1 double crochet, and that will complete the 4 we need for the round. So now, on this chain, which is the chain 2 we did at the beginning, I'm just going to insert my hook right behind it, or if you can go into the top stitch of it, that would work even better. So it's right over here. We're just going to yarn over and pull that through and slip stitch. And we are done with our round. Chain 2, and we're going to start in this very next stitch, right next to the chain, we're going to make 2 double crochets. And this is how we're going to start every single row. So I'm going to show you this once, and then we'll just move on to the other part of the purse. So in the stitch right next to our chain, we're going to make 2 double crochets. When we come all the way around, we'll make that last double crochet in the same stitch as the chain space and close our round with a slip stitch. So now in the next stitch, we're just going to make a double crochet, just 1 single double crochet. We'll go into the stitch after that and make 1 double crochet. And in the stitch after that, we make 1 more double crochet. So just keep working 1 double crochet in every stitch all the way until you get to the round. So just 1 all the way until you get to over here. So I'm going to keep working. You can pause the video if you need to. Otherwise, let's move on. So here are the top 2 stitches. Just pick any of the 2 on top that you prefer. So I picked these 2, and in each of these stitches, we're going to make 2 double crochets. That's going to create that round. We're going to do this in every single one of the rounds that we make for the base of the purse. So there was my first double crochet, and then I'll make my second. So now we're going to go into the next stitch, which is this one right here, and we're going to make 2 double crochets. So there's the first one and then the second one. So every time you work your way around, find the top 2 stitches and make 2 double crochets in each. You're going to do this every row. We're going to repeat this row about until you have a total of 7 rows. So it's going to be nice and tall, so just keep repeating it. It's going to start widening up, and you're going to have a nice base for your purse. So now on each one of the sides, so on the sides lengthwise, I guess the vertical ones if you want to call them that, we're just going to make 1 double crochet in every stitch. When you get to the other end, remember that you make 1 double crochet in the same stitch as your chain space, and you close your round with a slip stitch. If you need to see how to make a slip stitch, just sit tight. I will show you how to make a slip stitch in a little while. So here's our work. I repeated that same pattern for 7 rows. So repeat it until you can count 7 rows when you lay it flat this way. See, when you open it, you're going to have 14. So lay it to the side and count 7 rows, and then we're going to start working on the other pattern. So to make this a little easier, I switched to a very small version of this. So this is a tiny version of this big purse. That way I can move and show you a little more easily what it is we're going to do. So we did the base. This next row we're going to do, the first row we're going to make with our blue, is just a row of double crochets. So every single stitch is going to get 1 double crochet. In the row after that, we're going to skip stitches. So we're going to make 4 double crochets in one, and then we're going to skip. So here are 4 double crochets, and then you skip the next stitch, and then 4 double crochets, skip the next stitch, 4 double crochets, and so forth and so on. The next row is a single crochet, 2 chains, single crochet, 2 chains, single crochet. Then we repeat the 4 double crochets, and then the single crochet row, 4 double crochet row, etc. So it's just a 2-row repeat, and we're just going to switch colors is all we're going to do. So we're now going to start with our blue, and you can use whatever color you choose to if you want to do 2 other colors. So just leave a nice long tail that you can weave in later. Wrap the yarn around your hook and just slip it through that tan loop on your hook. And now we've switched to blue. Tighten up the stitch below it, which is the tan. Just tighten that up by pulling on the tan thread. Don't pull on the blue one or you're going to end up with a really, really long tail. We're going to start with a chain 2. So we've got chain 1 and then chain 2. Let me zoom in a little bit, and we're going to start with this very first stitch. So skip all of this bit right here. It'd be very difficult to work into anyway, so go into your very first stitch, which is this nice big one, and just make a double crochet. So there's one, and now go into the stitch right next to it and make a double crochet. So for this first row, you're just going to work 1 double crochet in every stitch of the round, and that does include the actual round part of this. Instead of making 2 and then 2, just make 1 double crochet all the way around. So for those who need to watch a little bit more, we're just going to keep making a few more double crochets here, and then I'll explain what I just said here in just a moment. So see, this is what it's going to start to look like. Work all the way around, and when you get to this side, you're going to make 1 double crochet in each of these stitches. So I will just keep working here. See you now. And now that I'm done. Alright, so we made it all the way around. Here is this tiny little stitch. Don't work into it, just ignore it. That's the last stitch of the row. We are just going to find our chain. So here's the chain and the very first double crochet right next to it. So it's this guy right here. What you're going to do is you're going to insert your hook into the stitch that's above that first post, or that first double crochet, and then you're going to yarn over, pull your hook through that stitch. Now you're going to pass this first loop through the second loop to make a slip stitch. So there is our first row of the bag part complete. There we go. And now for this next one, we're going to start the row where we're going to be skipping every other stitch. So I'm just going to try to make it easier here by cutting the tan. Make sure you leave a nice long thread to weave in later. And I'm going to double knot these 2 threads that are just sitting here so that I can make sure that they're not going to become unraveled while I'm working. And then I'll weave them in later at the end of it all. So I'll get these all tucked in so they're out of the way. And let's start with our next row. So we're going to start with a chain 2. So we've got chain 1 and chain number 2. And now we're going to start skipping stitches. So we're going to go into this next stitch and we're going to make 4 double crochets. So these I'm going to call the shells. So it'll be a little bit easier to talk about these later and I won't have to say 4 double crochets every time. I'm just going to call them the shells. So we've got our first double crochet, We're going to make double crochet number 2. Remember that these are all in the same stitch. So there's 3. And I'll make my last one, and I will show you why I call these the little shells. So here we go. See, they kind of look like a shell. So we made our first one, and now we're going to skip a stitch, which is this guy, go to the one right next to it, which is this guy. So skip, work into that one, and we're going to make another shell. Remember, the shell consists of 4 double crochets. And there we go. So now we skip a stitch, go into the stitch after that, and we make a shell. The rest of the round is going to be very much worked in the same way. So you skip a stitch and you work a shell, skip a stitch, work a shell, all the way around, and then you're going to close your round with a slip stitch. So for those who are a little more experienced and want to just move ahead and do that, go ahead, do that, work a shell in every other stitch, close your round with a slip stitch, and we're ready to go. So I have one last one for those that need to see what it is I'm doing. So I have 3 stitches left, so I'm going to skip the one that I need to skip in order to continue with the pattern and make my last shell of the row. And then I'll show you how we're going to close the row one more time, and then from here on out I'm just going to tell you to slip stitch. So that way we can save a little time and move on with our projects. So we find the chain, go to the first double crochet, go to the stitch above the first double crochet, insert your hook, yarn over, and then slip stitch. So our row is done. So here's our first row of shells, which would be the second row of the bag. And now we have to do these little dots right here. So we need to switch colors. And then we'll do one more row of blue, and then we'll switch everything to white. So we're not going to cut the thread on any of these. We're just going to work keeping your yarn active, if you want to call it that way. If you would prefer to cut it, go ahead and cut it. You're going to have to weave in all those ends though. So I don't want to weave them in. I'm just going to add my white and leave my blue in the background. So I'm going to carry, well, not really carry it, but I'm just going to let it hang out in the background. So just pull your yarn through your hook and then pull that white loop through the blue loop to switch color. We're gonna switch color a few times, so if you missed it, don't worry, we'll do it again. We're gonna start with a chain 2. Make sure you tighten your blue yarn, so give it a nice tug. And now we're gonna work between the shells. So find the spaces between all of your shells, and that's where we're going to make a single crochet. So we've already started with our chain 2. We're going to go into the first little gap space right here. So it's not really a chain space since it's just kind of in between everything, but it's the space between the 2 shells. I don't use the stitch, I use the space right below it. I find that it makes my stitches a lot cleaner, but if you prefer to use the stitch, go ahead and use the stitch. But I'm just going to insert my hook, yarn over. I've got 2 loops on my hook, so I'm going to yarn over and pull through both of those. We're going to do it again. So chain 2 and find the next space between the shells. So we're going to go, here are shells, here's our space, insert your hook into that space, and then you're going to yarn over, pull your hook out. We've got 2 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over and pull through both loops, and that is a single crochet. So we're going to repeat chain 2 and then single crochet in the shell space. So here's that little space, and we're just single crochet in here. So this is how it starts to look. Just keep repeating chain 2 and then single crochet in the shell space until you work your way completely around. So I'm here at the end already. I've got one last shell space. I've already made my chain 2, so I'm just going to make my single crochet. And here I'm going to slip stitch into this chain space over here. So find the chain, which is the very first one you made. See how there's this space underneath it? You're just going to insert your hook into that space and just yarn over and slip stitch. So there we go, slip stitch, and we're done with the white. Grab your blue yarn. You're going to yarn over and pull that yarn or that loop through the white loop. And now we chain 2. So we've got 1 and 2. Now tighten that bottom loop by pulling on your white thread, and that way it'll tighten the base of the knots. And each one of these shells will have 3 stitches. So there's 1, 2, 3. Work in the second one, which is the one in the middle. So we're going to make a shell. So yarn over and start your very first double crochet in the middle stitch of the shell. So I'm just going to try to work through these a little quickly. And make sure you go through your work so that you get the white chain as well. That's going to be tucked into the shell so you won't be able to see it. And the only thing that'll poke through will be those little single crochets. And they're just going to peek out and create that beautiful pattern. So here we go. Here's our very first shell. So that was 4 double crochets in the middle stitch. And now we're going to go into the shell that's right next to it. So go to that middle stitch and we're going to make another shell. So 4 double crochets in that middle stitch. So go all the way through your work. So see how I'm holding down even the white along with the blue? So I hope that made a little bit more sense. I was trying to show it so that everybody could see what I was doing. But if you still have questions, be sure to leave them in the comments. Alright, so there's our shell. Go into the next one, and you're also going to make a shell in the middle stitch. So the rest of the row is pretty repetitive. Just keep making a shell in the middle stitch of the shell from 2 rows ago. So I'll keep working on these and I'll show you what it'll look like here in just a second. There it is. See, and the little white starts to peek through. So keep working until you get to this point. So here we are at the last stitch. Now I just have to, we're gonna be switching yarn here in a little while. So we have one last row of blue. So I'm going to tuck the white under. So it's just going to be under where I'm going to be working. So we're going to close the row with a slip stitch, like we close every row. So I pulled the white yarn forward, and now I did my slip stitch, and now I'm going to pull it back again. So that's going to keep it from being really long on the inside of the bag since we're not cutting the yarn. And it'll keep you, like in case you throw something sharp in there, it won't cut the yarn and then you won't mess up your bag. So pull on the white thread until it's nice and tight, and then start with a chain 2. So now we're going to skip our shell and go into the shell space, and we're going to make a single crochet. So we're repeating what we did for the row with the white thread, only we're going to do it with the blue thread, because the next row we're going to switch this whole pattern to white. So I'm going to chain 2 and single crochet in the shell space, chain 2, single crochet in the shell space. Bless you. Sorry, my 4-year-old sneezing in the background. Alright, so that's what it's going to look like. Keep working all the way around. It's just chain 2 and single crochet in the shell space. And here it is. We are done. Now we have to switch to white. So yarn over and pull through that loop. Now we chain 2, and now this whole pattern gets repeated in white. So we're going to do the row of shells, and then a row of single crochet in blue, and then a row of shells in white, and a row of single crochets in white to switch to blue. So our first shell is going to be in the middle of the blue shell below it. So find that middle stitch in the shell and make your white shell. So there's my second double crochet. We got 3, and then 4. There we go. So here's the first shell. That's what it looks like. And now we're going to go into the next shell, which is this blue one right here. Find that middle stitch and make another white shell. So the pattern for this, guys, is available. It is on my blog. I do post all of my patterns for free. However, if you would like to purchase it and support my work, I would greatly appreciate it, and it is printable for you to keep. So any updates I make on it will be saved onto it, so if you save the link, you will have access to that pattern forevermore. So I'm just going to keep working here. So it's going to be one white shell in every blue shell. So remember to always work in the middle, and here's our pattern. So I worked my way around. I just repeated this over and over until I got to the end. We're going to close our row with a slip stitch, and we're going to switch to blue. So let's make our switch to blue. There we go. I'm going to tighten the white so it's nice and tight, and now we're going to chain 2. Now this is our single crochet row, so look for your little shell spaces and make a single crochet, and then chain 2, shell space, and a single crochet in the shell space. Chain 2, look for the shell space, and single crochet. Just keep repeating this all the way around. So as you can see, it's just a repetition of what we did in the previous color block. Now we're just switching the color to blue, see? Alright, so I'm at the very end. Here's my last shell space of my blue row. So I did my single crochet, and now I look for this chain. So here's my chain space. I'm going to insert my hook into that chain space, yarn over, pull that through like so, and slip stitch. Now we're done with the blue. Switch to the white. And now we chain 2 with the white. So we've switched. Here's my chain 2. Pull that nice and tight. And we're going to start with another row of shells. So where's my first? Here we go. There's the middle stitch on my first shell, and we're just going to make another shell. So 3 and 4, so 4 double crochets. Go on to the next shell, look for that middle stitch, and make another 4 double crochets or another shell. So we're at 3 and oh, there we go, 4. Go. Keep working until you finish the round. And here we are again. I finished this row. So now we have to slip stitch this row closed, and because we're going to do another round in white, we need to hide the blue. So we're going to pull it through the front of our work like so. So this is the other way you can hide your thread. So pull it in front of our work, and then chain 1, chain 2, and tuck it back. Make sure you give it a nice tight pull on that blue. So now we can go ahead and finish this round, which is our chain 2 and then single crochet. So if you're wondering why I hid the blue, it's so that it doesn't have a big long thread on the inside of the purse, that you don't want anything to get caught on that. So once we get to that very last row before we do a big color block switch, that's when you would try to tuck in the next color over. So there we go, let's lay that out. So there we go. So we'll just repeat that row, the chain 2 and then single crochet, finish that round, and then we're going to switch to the blue again and just repeat the process all over again. So as you can see, I did a couple of row repeats, so I did a total of 10 rows, and that is 5 rows in the blue color block and then 5 rows in the white color block. Now what I'm going to show you is how to do the top part of your bag. So I'm going to finish another row or two of in my small bag, and I'll show you how to finish the top. So here she is. I did another row. Don't do the very last row, which is this one with the single crochets. Just stop after your shells. So I did my shell row, and now for this top part we're going to do 2 rows of half double crochets, and it's going to be followed by 2 rows of double crochets and then 1 row of half double crochet to finish it all off. So to start, we're going to switch to blue. So let me get my blue yarn, yarn over, pull that through, tighten up the white yarn, and we're going to chain 2. oh, I'm sorry, chain one. We're working half double crochets. Chain one, just one, and we're going to skip a stitch, and we're going to half double crochet into the stitch right next to the one we skipped. So skip one, and then to make a half double crochet, you need to yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch you're going to be working into, and then we're going to yarn over again, pull our hook out, and you're going to have 3 loops on your hook. See, they're all 3 of them are here. Now you're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So there we go. That is a half double crochet. Skip a stitch, go into the one after that one, and make another half double crochet. So yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, you will have 3 loops, and you close the stitch by yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So another half double crochet. So skip a stitch and make a half double crochet in the stitch after that one. And we're going to finish the row in much the same way. So just skip a stitch, half double crochet, skip stitch, half double crochet until you make it all the way around. And then you're just going to slip stitch. So you'll slip stitch your row closed, chain one, and now for this row you're just going to make 1 half double crochet in every single stitch. So here's my first one. I'll go into the stitch right next to it and make another half double crochet. Go into the stitch right next to it. Oh, I chained one. You don't chain one. There we go. Into the next stitch and half double crochet. Next stitch, half double crochet until you finish your round. So here I am at the end again. So I'm just going to slip stitch my round closed, and we're going to do a chain 2, and we're going to make our row of double crochets. So I'm going to cut the white thread now because it's starting to get a little tangled, and at this point I'm pretty sure we're done with the white. So let's get that out of the way. I'll show you how to weave that in here later. But for now, we're going to keep with the row of double crochets. So go into the very next stitch from your chain and start with your first double crochet. So I'm going to work 1 into every stitch of the round, and then I'm going to make a second round of double crochets. So it's 2 rounds of double crochet, and when you get to the end, just remember that you have to slip stitch the round close and then chain 2 and then make another row of double crochets. So here I am at the end. I've made 2 rows. See, here they are. 2 rows of double crochets. Now we're going to make our very last row. So we chain 1 and we're going to start with half double crochets. So every one of the stitches in this round is going to have a half double crochet. Remember, your half double crochet starts like a double crochet, but you pull through all 3 loops at the end. Instead of yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, it's just yarn over, pull through 3. So make 1 in every stitch of the round until you get to the very end. So I'll keep working here and I'll see you in a bit. So here we are at the end. I'm just going to slip stitch this closed and we are done with this part of our bag. So I always just try to end mine with a chain, so sometimes it's easier to just keep your thread. So chain 1, cut a nice long thread of yarn, because then we're going to pull our hook out and the yarn, and it's going to make a nice little knot. So just pull on the thread, tighten your little knot, and you're ready to move on. So grab a tapestry needle or a yarn needle, whatever needle fits your yarn, get that all threaded through, and I'm going to show you how to weave in the ends. So I'm going to show you just with this one and weave in all the other ones. So what you're going to do is just work on the inside part of your bag so that you can't see it, and you're going to insert your needle so that it goes through the back stitches only. You don't want to go completely through your work because then you'll see it. So you just want to work exclusively in the back part of your bag. So I'm just going to sew from one side to the other, switch directions frequently, so go make a stitch in one direction and then make a stitch in another direction and then in another direction. Usually I use the square pattern. Sometimes I just switch directions and I don't even pay attention to what shape I'm making. But give it a couple good stitches, switch directions often, it'll keep your yarn from unraveling. If you have a short little tail left, cut it and then just tug on your work and it'll hide it. Then if you flip your bag inside out, only this one's really small, but flip your large bag inside out and weave in all of these other ends. So all of these guys, you're going to do the same thing, just weave them in. So I'll show you here now my big bag. Now you're going to grab your rope, or if you're going to make a yarn rope or whatever it is you want to use to hold your bag, you're going to grab that. And in the meantime, this is what the stitches will look like on the inside. So this, we didn't cut the yarn, remember, so we didn't have to weave in the ends. So you can see it in the inside of the bag, but you can't see it on the outside. So it keeps it nice and hidden. So now with your rope, cut 2 long pieces of rope so that they hang comfortably around your shoulder, or I guess over your shoulder. And then on the first row of double crochets that we made, so this is that first row, there's enough space so that you can pull your rope through. So just thread your rope through and tie it up with a knot and you are done. So do that for all 4 sides and that's it. And that's it, friends. I hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comments section below. If you want to see the written pattern for this project and many other of my projects, it is up on my blog. The link is in the description box below. The patterns are free, so go ahead and check those out. Subscribe to the channel. I do post videos every Thursday. And if you want to see all of my other projects, you can follow me on Instagram. I'm at mode.bespoke. You can see all the sneak previews for all the projects we're going to be working on here in the future and all the patterns you'll be able to see on my blog. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all again next Thursday.